Hello everyone. I'm thrilled to announce that part 2 of our series is finally here. I apologize for the delay, but the past few months have been particularly challenging due to some family problems. I appreciate your patience and support during this time. This journey has been incredible, and I'm so excited to share the next chapter with you. Stay tuned and enjoy the video. The next day Fim and Rena were about to come and visit Violet. Winter suggested to Violet that they can ask both Fim and Rena to come with them to Capital. But Violet wasn't sure about it. Then Butler came and told Winter someone came to see him. He then went off. Winter went him. He asked about the newspaper. He replied these are newspapers from Lackround. Madam Violet wasn't to see them. Then Winter asked for a glance, and he then stumbled upon one specific article about new technology aircraft. He then torn the article and kept it. Fim and Rena came and they talked with Violet. The next day, the day of the opening party for the Chiron branch of the Conneats Hotel. Meanwhile, some came to meet Winter. They were his father and stepmother. They both came from the city to meet Winter without telling him. He wasn't pleased to see them. He coldly asks what are they doing here. Then suddenly his stepmother opened her mouth and spoke. Winter. We came in hopes of solving the misunderstanding between us. She held his hand and tried to resolve their issue. She continued, we never ordered that doctor to do any bad deed. He then took away his hand and shouted, really? I confirmed it myself. He said that both of you ordered him to feed those pills to Violet. She continued, we really thought those pills would facilitate pregnancy. He was the one who made a misdiagnosis, and now he's trying to put the blame on us. When Catherine said as if she was about to collapse, James joined her. Think about it. Why would we ever try to feed those horrendous pills to your wife? Winter also shouts you should have told me about those pills before you even gave them to her. Then suddenly his stepmother spoke, but Winter. You had no interest in Violet at the time. You didn't look her way no matter how long she waited for you. Not even once. Don't say you were really expecting us to tell you about the pills then. I see how it is. You still don't trust the love from your family. It seems you haven't accepted us as your parents yet. You've never tried to accept our love, nor have you tried to reciprocate. Hearing her words, he felt like something hit hard. He was silent and couldn't think about anything. She continued, son, can't you please trust us from now on? Winter looked at the two people blankly. Then he picked up the remaining key and walked away. He opened the door to the spare room and led the two people in. The couple was disappointed that the room was noticeably smaller than the ones they had stayed in before, but they were not surprised that their son was expressing his love for his parents in such a snobbish way, as he had always done. The couple sighed at the thought of having to somehow hide the fact that they were staying in such a small room from their social contacts who were on the cruise with them. Thanks to their son, they always had the best seats at these important social events. After leading the way to the room, Winter hung the key in the key holder. Take a rest. He was about to leave when James caught him. Winter. Yes. Did you come here to try to work things out again with Violet? No, I will enjoy it for a while and then get divorced. Winter said as if it was no big deal and left the room. A moment after he left, James spoke firmly. As Violet said, let's choose Winter as the successor to the title. His words filled Catherine's eyes with strength. She continued, I said no. He spoke, anyway, Dave can't maintain the family alone without Winter's help. She continued, no matter what, how could my son? Dave is my son, born to me. How can you think of giving the position of successor to Winter, who I didn't even give birth to? He replied, Winter is a guy who spent all his money on his title. The best way to change his mind would be to recognize him as the successor. She then asked, then what do we do with Dave? He replied, if you make him the heir, doesn't that mean he will inherit? There are many reasons why the successor may not receive a title. When an unforgivable sin was committed, or when legitimate objections were raised that he would not be able to lead the family in the future, the successor could be replaced through a council of elders within the family. It also meant that even if they decided on Dave as their successor, the opposite could happen. If you keep going like this, your social life will be over. At James's words, Catherine sat down on the sofa. She muttered, how did this situation come to be? For a couple who grew up spoiled, there was no greater ordeal in their lives. During party time, they both came down in arms. She now slowly looked around the party. Any group was glancing at them. Because of the bullying she received before, Violet was not willing to take a step in any direction. Moreover, since she had been away from social circles for a long time, she had no idea who the socialites were. Winter suggested to introduce themselves. Hearing this, she was startled. She spoke, "It's a host duty, Winter." He then replied, "You realize that we're not living in an age where we still throw parties for war heroes, right? No one throws parties centered around men anymore. Normally, the proper thing to do would be to greet our families first, but then she saw her friend Sharon. Sharon immediately came to greet both husband and wife. She spoke, "You look gorgeous. You must have put a lot of thought into it, Sir Winter." Violet would never choose to wear this kind of dress on her own. He nodded and replied, "You really are her friend." Then Violet asked, "But who's this?" Sharon replied, "Let me introduce you. This is Ferran's friend, Sir Aus. Ferran couldn't make it because he was too busy. But Aus always has time on his hands, so I brought him instead." Then Winter opened his mouth and spoke, "I don't think that's exactly the case though." Violet asked, "If you're a friend of Ferran's, shouldn't you be stationed with him on the same ship right now?" Then the man shyly spoke, "That's right." Hearing this, Sharon spoke, "Wait, what? Then what are you doing here?" He replied, "Perhaps I should say that's almost right. I got discharged from the military." Sharon was furious. Then Winter intervened and spoke, "I couldn't let you come all the way here with another man. He wanted to be the one to come here with you even if it meant that he had to discharge himself from the military." "What else wants to say?" Winter already spoke, so he has nothing to say. Sharon was furious and she scolds him. Because of this, all four of them gathered all the attention. Guests started muttering, "You can tell just from a glance that they seem to have a great relationship." More whispers. What's more surprising is that everyone tried to talk to them and showed great interest in any conversation with the Duke and Duchess of Blooming. However, since neither Winter nor Violet showed any interest in them, more and more muttering sounds were heard. At that time, as if there was nothing else to do, the Duke and Duchess of Blooming approached the two people first. Catherine stood in front of Violet and spoke in a cold voice. "How can you do that? How could you leave without even contacting me? Do you know how much we worried about you?" Then James joined in next to her. "Even if you can't tell us where you've gone, you can tell us that you're doing well, right? How could you do that, having learned the example of the Lawrence family?" Then, before Violet could respond, Catherine hugged her. Since the hug happened in front of everyone, Violet couldn't push her away right away. Winter's expression crumpled. Since he didn't accept it, it seemed like they immediately clung to Violet. As Catherine let go of her, Violet greeted her softly. "It's been a long time since I last met you." "Yes, it's been a long time. You're not talking about my outfit today. How do you feel?" "Ah, you're pretty. You said that the Blooming family's daughters-in-law are not allowed to wear flashy clothes for 3 years. Are you okay now?" When she asked calmly, the Blooming couple's bodies trembled. Winter, who had been listening to their conversation, asked, "What do you mean? You shouldn't wear flashy clothes." Violet continued speaking with a puzzled look on her face as Winter seemed to have no idea what she was saying. "You had no idea. I knew you were wearing dark clothes because someone next to you said something. I heard it's a family tradition. I've never heard anything like that. Where in the world is there a tradition like that? Are you saying you followed that as a tradition? Then what should I have done differently?" Violet was isolated. Even if Violet didn't say anything, he knew what was going on. Winter muttered as if he had finally figured it out. "Somehow, that's why you don't wear the clothes I sent." "Winter." Catherine hurriedly called Winter, but he ignored it and continued talking. "Did you send it back?" Violet tilted her head at his words. "I always receive the clothes you gave me. The dress I managed to earn money and sent to you about 2 years after we got married. Yes. Why are you wearing a dress like that? Because you're royalty. Winter's expression gradually became cold as he explained things step by step. Violet couldn't understand a single word he said from beginning to end. Winter muttered helplessly, "You didn't get it. It's not that she refused. It's that it never got to her in the first place." He looked towards his parents. Embarrassment spread across Catherine's face. It was his mother, Catherine Blooming, who sent Violet's dress back with a letter saying she did not like this type of dress. "What happened, Mother?" As Winter asked, Catherine walked over with the sad look on her face that always comforted her son and stroked his arm. "I knew how you earned those dresses. But how will you feel when you become a mother and look at those dresses? I know you bought it while you couldn't sleep or eat properly." Catherine was certainly wrong, but she was not wrong. Those dresses were not easy to obtain. He regretted every part of those 3 years. During those 3 years, he experienced all kinds of joy in his business that made him forget all the pain. All of Violet's memories of those 3 years were unhappy. Every time he thought about it, he wanted to hide in a mouse hole. Violet took a deep breath and smiled. "So, you sent the dress." "I sent it." Violet felt rather sorry and patted the back of Winter's hand. "Sorry. You've given me more than I thought. That's what I didn't know. I should have looked around a little more. I'm so sorry." Instead of getting angry, Winter's heart sank when she apologized. Violet spoke. "I'm sorry, but can I say something to your parents?" Winter asked, "Why are you asking for my permission?" She replied, "Because you are a man who loves his family. Let's go out for a moment." She looked at the blooming couple, gave notice, and walked away. She blamed it on people's gaze. Mr. and Mrs. Blooming had no choice but to follow her outside. Violet walked a little further away. Catherine said, following behind her, "Violet, be honest. I hated Winter sending such nice clothes to you, who had taken everything away from my son. Our poor son. Are you going to hand over the title to my husband?" Violet interrupted, turned around, and asked. Then Catherine closed her mouth, refusing to answer, and James opened his mouth. Hearing this, mother-in-law shouts that this can't happen. She loves both her son and Winter, but never in history and an illegitimate child became an heir. So this isn't possible. But Violet reminds her how she and her husband took advantage of Winter's loneliness. They never love him truly, and that's why Winter is like this. She told them she could overlook what they did to her, so they should do as she said. But her mother-in-law wasn't giving up too. She continued, "She can't do this." So Violet told her that she would convince other Blooming elders so that they could make Winter heir of the Blooming family. And she will tell this whole world what she did to Violet. Then Violet went back. Winter was waiting for her. He asked what happened. She replied, "Nothing." Violet looked at the watch on Winter's left wrist. It was a platinum watch she gave him. He usually wears a watch that matches his outfit, but today it was more expensive than any other watch he owns. He had a strong desire for material things, but he also got bored easily. Violet rarely saw him use one item more than once. At the time, she honestly thought he was just a snob who only cared about money, but now that she thought about it, he was like that. Thinking like that, Violet felt a little bitter and gently cupped Winter's watch with her hand. Winter immediately asked about her actions. "You're tired. Shall we go in?" It seemed like he thought her actions were some kind of signal. Violet smiled and shook her head. "No." He spoke, "If you have something to say it right away." She opened her mouth and said, "I just touched it because I thought it was the watch I gave it." "You're overreacting." He continued, "The last time you called me like this, you did something right away. You're dead." Violet then made an embarrassed expression. Her heart must have been pounding for a moment, but Winter became thoughtful and sighed deeply. "You can't even imagine how many times I relive the situation and that day after you left. You died that day. Because I didn't listen to you. Oh, shit." Winter's trauma must have been so severe that he began to find it difficult to even breathe, let alone continue speaking. Violet now realizes that shooting herself in front of Winter was a huge trauma for him. She then spoke, "Sorry. I'm so sorry, Winter. I'm not dying anymore. I was sad then, but I'm not sad now. He continued, how can I believe that? Even then, I thought you were. You said you were going to be brutal. I'm that stupid. I don't know how you feel. But how can I be sure that you won't die? Winter. Winter Blooming was a man who confused women. He was told that such men were usually of very poor quality. Sometimes he acts like he likes her, but doesn't actually say that he likes her. Even though she confessed that he was her first love and that she still often gets excited about him, he didn't budge. Confessing your feelings to someone who didn't seem to like you was painful and shameful. His fierce and bitter eyes always felt like they were calling out to Violet. It felt like he was asking her to come to his side. Violet was fooled by those eyes from day one. From day one, like a fool, she thought he wanted her to be by his side. She was truly the greatest fool in the world to have fallen in love with the eyes of the man he saw for the first time that day. To change his mood, Violet asked for a dance and he agreed. They both danced together and had fun. Winter told how Violet looked. She looks beautiful. Both of them were having fun. But behind them someone doesn't look pleased. Originally, Winter didn't plan on staying for long, and Violet felt burdened by the attention, so the two left the party early. Even though it was early, it was close to 12 o'clock. The party was now starting in earnest. As soon as the door closed, Violet sighed. The party was this difficult. I forgot for a moment. Winter shook his shoulders and laughed at her words. Violet, who was heading to the sofa, thoughtlessly looked through the rock-crowned newspaper that Winter had brought her, found a torn part, and asked. She asked, why is this place torn apart? He replied, I took it. There's something about airships. Airship, she muttered. He continued, yes, I really like airships. There was more than one thing she didn't understand about his actions, and Violet was tired of asking about them one by one. Now she doesn't even want to know why he put someone else's leg on top of his leg or why he threw someone else's shoe. Violet asked, perhaps because he liked airships. She asked, how old were we when the unmanned airship became a success? He replied, I was 14. You must have been 8 years old. I remember that time. He continued, did you see it in the newspaper? You didn't come to the unmanned airship demonstration site, right? She muttered, I went. He continued, if the princess comes, I will remember. There was no protocol at all. She spoke, my brothers said we were going secretly, so I followed them. I miss him so much. He continued, oh, I see. It was very cold that day. It was really, really cold. It was bitterly cold. She responded. Violet recalled a memory. In the midst of the crowds of people, she saw an unmanned airship departing from the middle of a field. An airship rose above the crowd of people. Everyone was astonished. He said, it was red. The number 989 was silver. I heard that everything from issue 980 was successful. It was number 989 that was revealed to people. I heard that too, she replied. The two were so absorbed in their memories that they even forgot that their legs were overlapping each other. Winter unconsciously massaged Violet's legs, which must have had a hard time wearing shoes. Violet felt a little embarrassed but decided not to stop Winter from doing as much as possible today. Next day, Violet met Ash. He sat down across from Violet. Behind Ash stood the two guards he had brought with him, both of whom were the second sons of a prestigious family. Ash opened his mouth. Are we talking about the Heston family? What are you doing? When Violet asked in disbelief, Ash responded in an annoyed voice. He continued, I'm not saying I'm going to do it. That's what the Hestons want. She spoke, I thought the Heston family were upright people. He continued, there's nothing I can do. The times are throwing out upright people and running only on capital. It's a world full of trash like your husband. Ash said in a mocking tone. Violet answered strongly, if you are planning to use marriage as a means of transaction. If that's the case, I refuse. Ash's eyebrows narrowed. He didn't seem to expect Violet to come out so decisively. Ash's position must have been difficult, so he spoke in a gentle voice for the first time in a while. She continued, if you, a princess, get divorced, the whole country will try to criticize you. It's not a bad idea to find a married couple before that. Besides, it's the Heston family you respect. Although she felt bitter, Violet answered with a strong voice. Heston, whom I respect, does not seek royal authority from a man who disbanded the royal family with his own hands. Especially because he doesn't give in to his pride and get paid for it. He said, don't reject it right away, but think about it more. You're fortunate and honored to be remarrying into the Heston family. She continued, I decide my luck and glory. Ash clicked his tongue and frowned. It's not that he doesn't know that his sister isn't flexible, but he didn't know she wouldn't even consider it like this. Just like when she was isolated in the Blooming family, she had thought complacently that she could handle this marriage as she pleased. But seeing Violet say she would refuse, it didn't seem like it would be resolved as easily as he thought. Ash asked when he finally came to his senses thanks to the refreshing taste of the fruit. Then what about remarriage? She continued, I'll take care of it. If you want to gain strength through marriage, you can get married. Ash did not respond to her words. Ash stood up and said to her, think again. It's for the Lawrence family. I don't think so, she replied. Ash frowned at Violet's firm answer and looked at her. Then Violet took a step towards him and she said, Ash, my husband is Lord Winter Blooming. I lived with that man hating me so much for 3 years. So, he muttered. She continued, so, even if you glare at me like that, well, compared to my husband, I don't feel as threatening. With those words, Violet turned around. Flip, who was standing a little away and guarding her, walked behind her and bit his lip to keep him from laughing. When Violet came down to the first floor lobby to take the elevator, she ran into Sharon and Oz who were just getting off the elevator. Violet asked with a happy expression, do you want to eat now? Sharon asked. We ate in the room and left. Oz nodded at Sharon's words from behind. Sharon continued speaking cheerfully, I come around here so often anyway that I don't think there's any need to go out. Lord Winter gave me this to use. Because sponsored admission is possible. Sharon held up a black card and quickly said to Violet, crossing her arms. Let's sponsor together. I guess so. I haven't been there since it was finished. Good. As Violet turned to go to the back garden together, she noticed Oz's eyes drooping. Violet said, gently pulling out her arms. She spoke, oh, now that I think about it. I think I should go see my husband for a moment. I forgot. Yes. Well then, you can't do it. See you later. Sharon waved her hand casually and said goodbye. When Violet looked at Oz again, his expression was as bright as expected. A relieved Violet turned around as she saw Oz being dragged away with an excited expression by Sharon, who asked her to quickly go take a look. Suddenly, she looked around and saw that people were watching to approach Violet. As she was walking along the castle wall, avoiding the crowd, worrying in her mind, she found a woman snooping around underneath the castle wall. It was Pim. When Pim saw Violet she was startled. She said she came here for a job. But Violet said, Pim looks too friendly with the staff and looks like she is familiar with them. Pim denied. Hearing this, Violet asked Pim to take a walk with her. Then finally Violet asks, since when Pim is working for her husband. Pim tried to make an excuse again, but when she saw Violet's disappointed eyes, she couldn't lie anymore. She sighed. I once worked at the Canuck Hotel in the capital. Meanwhile, my parents in my hometown said they were not feeling well, so we all came back to take care of them. My husband still found a job on a boat, but I couldn't, so Elle was wondering how I would raise Lena when Mr. Hyle contacted me. They hired me to ensure Violet's safety and take care of you so you can adapt well here. Don't make that face. If I hadn't taken on this job, Violet would have lived in anxiety. What do you mean? Violet asked. Pim continued, Violet had the village chief kicked out as soon as you got here. That damn guy once tried to drag people to Violet's house. To take revenge. Did he? She muttered. She continued, at that time, I hired some people and beat up that damn village head and kicked him out. Do you think that's all there is? When Violet sees something wrong, you say it right away. During this time, I was quite upset. Violet made a blank expression. As the story began, Pim continued to complain. At first, Violet didn't have any vitality at all. There's nothing special about it right now. Pim spoke teasingly and continued, loving Violet's embarrassed expression. Anyway, it didn't usually take a lot of work. Then all the villagers. No, that's not it. I'm the only one who's been contacted. Everyone helped out of kindness. To be honest, there was no need for someone like me to interfere with everything going on with someone like Violet. I just helped Violet because I like you. Of course, I received the money because it was good. Violet was greatly shocked but also grateful. Pim's care for her up to this point could never be seen as motivated only by money. Pim told her about her household chores, and when she seemed to be eating poorly, Pim nagged her and invited her to eat. Above all, being such a good friend was not something she could say she was paid to do. Then winter came. Seeing him, Pim ran away. Pim spoke quickly and hurried back into the building. Winter ran up to her and wrapped his arms around her. Why are you here? I've been looking for you for a while. She spoke. You said you were buying the airship business. Don't talk back. He replied. She continued. I was worried about a spy, but I should have looked into the spy on me first. Winter froze at her words. Violet asked quietly, keeping her eyes on Winter. She then asks, why did you do that? Sorry. He apologized. She continued, I didn't ask you to apologize. He continued, if the question that needs an answer is why, I had no other choice. Just because I know where you are doesn't mean I can force you to come. Then you just stay there and I take responsibility for your safety. Don't run away again, please. Seeing him distressed, Violet then spoke. I am not angry, I was thinking we could now go back to Lackround. Hearing this, only then did Winter's expression relax. Good idea, I'm sure you'll like it. The new house. A new house, she muttered. He continued, a house I bought in the capital to branch out. Winter smiled in relief, perhaps because she was no longer angry. In the late afternoon, Lulu and Turin arrived in front of a mansion on the outskirts of the capital city of Lackround. Spring was just about to begin in the Lackround capital. Although the whole world was full of freshness, the mansion was filled with darkness, as if it had been abandoned. Lulu said, startled, what is this? How does our little lady live here? That's right. When Turin nodded, Lulu grabbed his arm. When she knocked on the door, the butler who was wandering around found her and asked, who are you? Oh, I couldn't send you a message because I was in a hurry. When Lulu presented the letter Winter gave her, the butler opened the letter, checked it, and his eyes widened. Then he shouted, where is the law for this? I can't believe you fired me so suddenly. I think we should still talk about it. When Lulu held out her hand, she found the documents that Turin had kept and quickly handed them over. There is evidence that workers' salaries were stolen. What? Go quickly and prepare for a lawsuit. The CEO won't look at it. Well, that can't be. The butler became restless and ran away frantically. Lulu, looking at that scene, clicked her tongue and entered the mansion. The workers, who had been doing nothing the whole time, came rushing out in response to this commotion. The inside of the house was a mess because no one was taking care of it, and since no one was taking care of it properly, most of the places where things should have been were empty. It was all stolen. Lulu made a serious expression. It didn't seem like there was usually much to do. The next day before boarding, Violet met everyone in the town before leaving. Violet returned home several times soothing people and saying goodbye. She felt like crying when she thought about saying goodbye to her home. When she returned home with a depressed heart, she saw that Winter had come first and was packing up her luggage. She looks surprised when Violet sees the house completely empty. She asked, hey, did you even pack the furniture? How do you get that? What are you talking about? Winter frowned and grumbled. He then replied, I'm going to take the house too. You're taking my house. When Violet tilted her head at the completely incomprehensible sentence, Winter shamelessly responded, I should take it to the garden. Because this house I sleep well. Violet, startled by his words, grabbed Winter's arm, thinking about the huge budget it would take to move the house across the continent. He then told her that he had given Pim a new job so that she could provide a good education for her daughter. Hearing this, Violet was happy. He continued, "See, money can solve all the problems. But still, I tried everything and can't keep you by my side, can't win your heart. Now the wealth is meaningless to me." Seeing him like this, Violet was worried about him. Finally, they went off. Violet bought a copy of Rockround's newspaper of the day and boarded the train. Violet, who was sitting across from Winter and slowly reading the newspaper, stiffened slightly. Winter quickly noticed it and asked, "Why, what article did you see? Did you give the villa to the Heston family and Ash?" There was an article that said the Heston family's title succession ceremony was held in a private villa at the Cannock Hotel midway between the capital and the north. Then Winter picked up the newspaper and checked it, saying, "The Heston family is the leader of Northern Rockround. If the Heston family doesn't use our hotel, the entire North will revolt." "Yes." When Violet nodded and turned her attention to the article, Winter said in frustration, "If you have any complaints, tell me. Ash probably asked for your villa on purpose. He wants to show that you also support his return to the throne. I'm just a businessman. You are probably the person who looks down on you the most in the world." Violet continued calmly, "You are no longer just a businessman. A business that can control the social world from its own hands. What's important about social circles? I'm a stranger. Yes, you are a foreigner. But the fact that you have power in the social world means that you can give power to the family you want. Are you telling me to abandon my great customer because of political games? It's not like that. I'm just saying don't belittle your power." Violet smiled and closed the newspaper. "I can see why Margrave Heston gave up his pride to marry me." "What are you talking about? If we get divorced, I will receive a considerable amount of property. The Heston family will also covet that property." "No, don't talk about money or get married. Carson Heston is 47 years old. He's more than twice your age." "That's right." Looking at Violet's bitter expression, Winter realized that she was really talking about herself and shouted, "What kind of crazy talk is this? Isn't it enough just once? Is he going to force you to get married again? Reject it immediately. I already told Ash that I would refuse. But just in case, where are you by any chance?" Violet paused. In the first place, Winter just wanted to make his own money, regardless of whether Ash took the throne or not. But the moment he found out that Violet was included in the terms of the deal, he exploded with anger. "Oh, shit." Winter ruffled his hair angrily. He shouts, "Cancel, right now." But Hyle spoke, "Nothing good can come of going against the Heston family." Winter shouts, "But, that damn bastard wants to marry Violet." Hyle can't believe what he has heard. The whole Knight's family is dead. Violet looked embarrassed at the people at the Cannock Hotel who were upset by her words. She thought her husband wasn't doing well these days. Finally, they arrived in front of the large iron gate on the outskirts of the capital, enjoying the air of Lackround with a longing heart. It was pitch black. Violet said to Winter worriedly, "It's too dark inside the door. Is this how I can walk in the direction of the mansion?" "You don't have to worry at all," he replied. He took a few steps back, leaving Violet with a little excited, like a boy with something to show off. "Look inside the door there. I have something to show you." "What is it?" Violet looked inside the door, curious. Meanwhile, Winter shouted into the door, "Turn on the lights." As his voice boomed in the darkness, a rumbling sound as if something was rolling inside was heard. After a while, Violet's mouth opened of its own accord. In the deep darkness, very bright light bulbs flickered and lit up. The majesty of the mansion was revealed in every space of the huge mansion by the bright light from the electric bulbs, an intense light that could never be compared to candlelight. "Oh my God, Winter!" Winter, who was satisfied with Violet's touching eyes, was proud and boasted. "I didn't know I'd be showing this in just 1 year. But thanks to you, it became even more perfect. Jorgen 207 filament bulb. Look at this clear, Clean light. That's amazing. Most of the things that impress Violet, who has lived with everything she can, are these advanced civilizations. As she walked, unable to take her eyes off it, Winter followed her and said, I've never seen anything like this. The last light I saw was blinking and very dim and I like it. It was very expensive. Oh, of course, it's still expensive and you have to replace it with a new light bulb if you turn it on for 8 hours. Is it okay to say that gold is being ground up and destroyed? Violet's eyes widened at those words and she asked, well, now that I've been surprised enough, shall we just turn it on when we need to? Winter asked, why do you not want the royal family to be restored? He spoke. Disbanding the royal family meant acknowledging and apologizing for the royal family's failures. It did. He muttered. Just a few years is not an apology, and I think that if the royal family needs to be restored, it should be because the people of Lackround want it. Otherwise, even disbanding the royal family would be taking advantage of people's hearts. Winter thought about her words for a moment and grumbled. As expected, you are stubborn. She asks, are you frustrated? He continued, no, it's fortunate that there is at least one normal person in the royal family. She was amazed, wow, why are you giving me all the praise? I heard you often call me pretty these days. He replied, isn't that more of a sentiment than a compliment? When Violet spoke jokingly, Winter laughed cheerfully. Violet pulled Winter's arm. Now, will you answer my question as well? Why did I decide to open a hotel? It would be ridiculous. It's okay to ask, she spoke. He then sighed and spoke, when I first ran away from the restaurant, I didn't have a place to sleep. Yes. At that time, I was already big so it wasn't a big deal if I slept on the street, but since I kept sleeping on the street, I wanted to sleep somewhere with a ceiling. There was a famous hotel in southern Hayfeet, and even though I had been sleeping on the street for several days, the manager was strangely welcoming. Even if I tried to enter a restaurant the size of my palm, I was kicked out because I was dirty. So I spent all the money I had that day and slept in the best part of the hotel. For the first time in my life, I fell asleep quietly in my bedroom, without fear. That day, I realized that not everyone in the world goes to sleep in the barn like I do, fearful of when they might get beaten up. Turns out, they only recognized me because they knew Cho was my father was. Isn't it a funny story, Violet? She then spoke, you are a good storyteller. He wasn't sure how she felt about his backstory. Then he held her hand and spoke, Violet, I wish our story ends here. At night when they were asleep, Violet suddenly woke up, and she heard some noises. When she opened her eyes she saw Winter was having nightmares. In his nightmare, he recalled all the attempts she made. Then Violet called his name, Winter, Winter, wake up. Finally, when she shook it, Winter suddenly opened his eyes. As soon as he found Violet, he quickly sat down in his seat and hugged her. Winter was breathing hard, like someone who had fallen into the water and was rescued. Hearing all the noise, Flip also came running. She asked, Flip, what is going on? He replied, it looks like the CEO is having a nightmare. Nightmare, she muttered. He told her, yes, the CEO often suffers from such severe nightmares. Things were a little better these days, but then it happened again. Flip had sleeping pills and alcohol in his hands. Violet said in shock, you shouldn't give alcohol and drugs together. We have tried many things, but there is no other way to put the CEO back to sleep. Flip answered in tears. What kind of situation is this? So there is no way. Violet wants to scold Winter for this, but she can't. Then he asked her to sleep with him. Flip left the room. They both hugged each other and lay down. He said, after all, we will be strangers in a few days, so please let us enjoy our rest of the day peacefully and happily. Violet tried to raise her head a little, but she couldn't see his face because she was trapped in his arms. She was overcome with the urge to see his face, but Winter stubbornly held Violet in his arms and kept her from moving. It's sad that spring is short, so maybe that's why he sounded sad. Violet had a hard time sleeping, trying to soothe her inexplicably agitated heart, while Winter, on the other hand, quickly fell asleep soundly. Winter immediately left for the company to discuss matters concerning the Heston family. Violet also had to come up with a strategy. As Jen placed the paper and pen neatly in front of her, Violet began writing down the current situation one by one on a piece of paper, and Jen, who was glancing at it from the side, said in fascination. The Heston family was not the only prestigious family in Lackround, and among them, there were certainly those who had animosity towards Ash, who was using the royal family as he pleased. No, it was normal to be there. Violet was thinking of writing letters to them all. The names of the families to whom letters should be sent were also written in advance. She was planning on sending a letter to the family that was clearly on Ash's side. As Violet continued to write the letter until her wrist throbbed, Jen came back from her absence and said in tears, "Little madam, I mean Her Majesty the late Queen, she is here." Violet spoke, "If my mother is here, you can call her Lady Ella Felice." Violet finished speaking and stood up. "Take her to the balcony. Because it's a nice day." "Yes, little madam." Jen rushed out. She knew it would come soon at Ash's request, but she didn't expect it to be this fast. "I did come back to Lackround." Thinking about that, Violet made up her mind and walked forward. The balcony, which was large enough to fit 3 or 4 tables, overlooked a beautiful garden, and all the gods from the continent's legends were carved on the marble railing. Violet smiled at her mother, Ella Felice, as she entered the balcony. "The first tea time I have in this house is with my mother. It's meaningful." Ella got to the point. "How are you and your husband? I heard you were on a contemplative period." Violet thought about her relationship with Winter for a moment and then quietly opened her mouth. "It's changed a little bit." "Change?" her mother muttered. Violet continued, "He spends a lot more time with me than before." "That's unexpected," she replied. Violet muttered, "Yes, really." Ella said, "Fortunately, you seem to be doing well." "Yes. Then there won't be such a big light over alimony." Violet continued, "I guess so. He also wants me to receive proper alimony." Her mother muttered, "So? A person who only knows money like that." Violet continued, "He said it was for the many women who would get divorced in the future. I don't know when he started caring so much about social things." Violet felt strange that as she spoke, it seemed a little like she was bragging about Winter, so she held her tongue and kept her mouth shut. Then Ella said with a relieved face, "Good. The Heston family will also be respected." At Ella's words, Violet put down her teacup a little loudly and asked, "Did Ash do that?" "I'm going to remarry Margrave Heston." Ella spoke, "It wasn't just Ash. Everyone agreed, including the Lawrence family, the Heston family, and the Blooming family." Violet asks, "Without my opinion or my husband's opinion?" Violet, "We are not people who can marry with opinions." Ella continued, "I didn't marry your father because I loved him. I got married because I was a royal descendant. The same goes for my husband. I married him not because I love him, but because I am the legitimate daughter of the Felice family." Violet spoke, "Couples must be devoted to each other. It's always included in Lackround wedding vows." Her mother replied, "Yes. Of course, we must be devoted to each other. But someone else. You're old enough to understand what I'm saying now." "Ah, mother." Violet sighed heavily and continued, "One such marriage is enough." "Violet," her mother shouts, "I wasn't born to go around getting married as a bargain here and there." "My mother might think so." Violet continued speaking with a powerful voice. "Don't even think about touching my alimony. In particular, Ash can't even take a single coin. Not even one." Ash was terrible for putting her mother in front of her to make this marriage happen, and right now she hated her mother too. Ella said, looking toward the garden, "You will have a lot, but Ash has nothing. Please feel sorry for your brother just once." "Mother," Violet, who was about to scream, closed her mouth again. She never told her mother how many times she tried to end her life with her own hands. No matter how much a mother looks at her daughter, the story never comes out of her mouth. Ella put down her glass gracefully and spoke, "I guess I should go. I'll see you next time at the Margrave Heston title ceremony." Violet continued, if I refuse to marry him, Ash will not be able to grant him a title. Ella replied, so you're saying that a prestigious family like the Heston family should hand down titles to each other and inherit them? Violet spoke, yes, I think it should be that way. It's something that can't be helped. Ella replied, you can't decide on family affairs on your own. She replied, then I guess I'll have to run away again. He can't get married without a bride. Violet, her mother screamed. She continued, Mother, please don't put politeness first when it comes to sacrificing me for my brother. That is not politeness, it is violence. Her mother replied, oh my, it's just as Ash said. What do you mean? Violet asked. Ella continued, as you become more like Lord Winter, you become someone who only cares about money. Violet sighed and replies, is it so? So, you two noble gentlemen, as I said before, don't pay attention to my alimony. Violet stood up. You came to convey Ash's words on his behalf, right? Then please pass it on to Ash instead. If you used my husband once, that's enough. No one from the Lawrence family has the right to demand anything from my husband. The alimony I will receive in the future is the reward for my efforts to protect my family. Ella shouts, I can't believe it. You are the child I gave birth to. Me too. At her words, Ella looked as if she had been slapped by her daughter. Violet didn't care and immediately told Lulu. Show my mother the door. Yes, little madam, Lulu replied. Anjali, who came back from vacation, was like a machine repeating the words no. Absolutely not. Absolutely no way. Winter must have gotten tired of yelling, so he lowered his body slightly to her eye level and began to appease her. Winter called him, Anjali, listen to me. But Anjali didn't like it. I don't like it. Without even pretending to listen to the words of disapproval, Winter held up the telegram, feeling encouraged by the telegram that Lulu had just sent. It was sent by Lulu, with the details of Ella's recent visit and what Violet had said written down in ancient times. If you used my husband once, that's enough. No one from the Lawrence family has the right to demand anything from my husband. The alimony I will receive in the future is the reward for my efforts to protect my family. Do you see this? My wife said this. This is for me too. Looking at the expression on Winter's face as he spoke, Anjali wondered a little why he felt like he was doing it to show off. Winter continued his persuasion. Are the Heston family not some kind of bastards, who would go to such lengths to stand up for not giving them a villa? Anjali replied, yes, stand up. You already have a bad relationship with the Heston family. Winter continued, that is that and this is this. There's no way nobles could be that childish. Anjali replied, this isn't childish. It's a matter of pride. Nobles are people who don't want to give in to their pride and are willing to go to war. They have no pride. Anjali squirmed at Winter's words and spoke with a rare, fierce expression. There is. You can't see it because the CEO is stepping on it. I'm sorry if that happened. So please help me solve it. No matter how much you try, you can't solve this, CEO. Winter even said sorry, but Anjali was adamant. From the looks of it, it seemed like a really difficult problem to solve. Winter asked, is it possible to avoid remarriage if I am opposed to it? Anjali continued, no, realistically. Even if your wife's opinion is different, the conversation will have already ended within the family. They will hold a knife to her throat and take her to the ceremony. There is no separate group of criminals. Are you saying that you are ultimately going to abandon the entire northern market to prevent her from remarrying? It's my company. Winter replied. Anjali continued, yes. You also decided on the airship business on your own. So it won't work this time. There is a huge amount of money that needs to be spent there, so what are you going to do if you throw away the northern market as well? Winter covered his face with both hands. He thought all he had to do was disappear from Violet's life, but that wasn't all. Thinking like that, Winter responded with some resignation. I will take care of it. Anjali, who heard his words as a means of pushing back against him, widened his eyes. Aren't you in the mood to take care of it now? Anjali shouted and stopped without realizing it. He didn't think it was strange that Winter's hand flew away, but his steps turned toward the door. Then the door swung open. Violet, who was standing in front of him, asked with wide eyes, "How on earth do you know?" "I do not know either at all." Winter actually looked like he didn't understand her. Violet took a step inside and smiled when she saw Anjali. "I heard you went on vacation. Did you have a good time?" "Yes, I had a nice vacation." Anjali looked a little embarrassed by Violet. But he did not miss this opportunity and spoke quickly. "Rather than that, if you give up on the northern market like you are trying to do, it will really be." Anjali, who had closed his eyes tightly in fear, spoke again. "It's really a huge loss. Moreover, since we have started a new business, the northern region is a market we can never give up." When Anjali overcame Winter's threats and spoke to the end, he glared at him as if he were going to kill her. Violet nodded slightly as if he understood. "I understand. Thank you. I'll go out and see." Anjali bowed politely and left the place. Then Winter started messing with her hair. "This is why people shouldn't rest," he grumbled. After resting, he gained the strength to fight back like that. Violet then said, "Winter, I guess I was wrong. Sorry." "What?" Hearing this he was surprised. She continued, "This was an offer I couldn't refuse anyway. It's really selfish of me to ask you to put the company in danger just because of me. Proceed as scheduled." "I can't do that," he replied. She continued, "Since this is my remarriage, I will try to resolve it in my own power. I thought about the 3 days you didn't come in without contacting me." He asks, "Wait for a second. You're not angry, are you?" "I didn't come in to solve your problem." She replied, "I'm not angry. Unlike other people, you're the type of person who thinks it's okay to not contact home for about 3 days. I understand." Winter was relieved by Violet's words, but fortunately, belatedly, he felt there was a bone in her words and frowned. She sighed heavily as if she had given up. "I'm fine. But do it next time you remarry. Of course, going home every day is also a good idea." At Violet's words, Winter looked like he was wondering how she could say such nonsense. He frowned and said, "Anyway, how are you going to solve it?" She continued, "First of all, I don't have much time. I plan to stay away for a while." "Are you going to run away?" he asks. "Escape, yes, run away," she replied. "I will find you soon." When Winter spoke as if he was talking to himself, Violet responded in a puzzled voice. "Why are you looking for me? I'm not running away from you, so I'm planning on telling you." Winter, who was heartbroken for a moment, was relieved and nodded, "Right." She continued, "If I get alimony, I'll be able to run away further." Winter nodded silently, then he picked up the tie he had thrown away and said. He spoke, "I'm looking into where you can run away. I don't want even a penny of my wealth to go to Ash Lawrence." She then replied, "Well, you know better." "Thank you," he said, "this time it will be a very luxurious escape." Ash's expression crumpled after checking the letter from the Heston family. The story was that Violet was informing the Noble families about this situation, so what happened? Since the Heston family cares a lot about respect, Violet's proactive behavior seems especially embarrassing. Ash believed that all the choices he had made so far were just reasonable. He repaid the country's debt with his own efforts and calmed public sentiment with his own efforts. However, his sister was saying that she would divorce for her own safety, and now she was refusing to remarry even though he had arranged for her to sort things out, so he was going crazy. Ash, whose head was a mess, stood up to call his friends and go hunting, but Robin, his bodyguard, said, "Your Highness, Northerners have come to the capital city." "Heston." "No, they are the wives of those who work in the salt mines of Caliban." "Why them?" "They said the mine entrance had collapsed and the miners were trapped, so they were asking for help." "You want me to help them with that?" "They seem to think that just because I farm, I really am a farmer." "Tell him to get off right away." Ash Lawrence, who considered himself a king, felt ashamed that the miners' wives had dared to come to see him. This was all because of his father. Didn't his prestige fall because he disbanded the royal family to resolve the accident his father had caused. Then suddenly Ash got a cunning idea. Ash spoke to Robin with a satisfied expression. Tell the wives they should go to the blooming mansion because the violet blooming can only help. If Violet refuses, reporters will follow her, and if she accepts, there will be no time to complain about not wanting to remarry. Yes, Your Majesty. Meanwhile Violet and Winter come back to their mansion after a picnic. When they reached, Jenna came running to inform them that the wives of the miners had come for them. It seems like something went terribly wrong in the north. Then all the wives and Violet had a meeting. All the wives seemed distressed. The residents of the mansion offered tea to the miners' wives, but no one drank it. After listening to the detailed explanation of the situation, Violet nodded and stood up. Violet then spoke. The salt mine in Caliban has collapsed and the miners are trapped inside. You saw Ash first and he told them to go here. It's already been 48 hours. 48 hours have passed since they were buried. 18 people are buried in the mine, and they only have a week's worth of food. We'll need manpower. There is a fire brigade in the capital that goes when trouble arises for the royal family. I heard they're not doing anything right now, so I'll ask them to do it. Everyone else, I suggest you go back and check the situation there. And Nancy, would you please come with me to meet the fire brigade and then show me the way? Yes, thank you, Your Highness. I know this isn't the time to say this, but the royal family has been disbanded, so please just call me ma'am. Nancy nodded her head sharply at Violet's words. Nancy, who sent the group away first, followed Violet and said, "We need to hurry up." Then she was leaving for the fire brigade station when she met Winter. He asked where you were going, she told him. Then Violet spoke soothingly to Winter. I'm sorry, but if I have something to say, I'll do it later. I need to go to the fire brigade. Now they're not doing anything. The Royal Fire Brigade may be a humble people, but they are all from aristocratic families. For the sake of strangers who say they are crazy. Winter, who was raising his voice, realized the answer and muttered. I plan to follow you to the Caliban mines. Violet nodded. He said, of course, you should. He replied, it's crazy. Why are you going there? Why do you care about those guys? Winter asked with anger in his face. Hey, princess. Now that you're married to me, do you feel like a stranger? These people have nothing to do with you. Of course, it doesn't matter if I come out. She spoke, even if I say yes, why don't you care? You're from the same clan. He continued, why am I like those guys? I climbed so hard to avoid being the same. Just as not everyone from this country is like you, not everyone from the same clan is the same. We are strangers, different people. I think so, she muttered. He continued, I've lived all this time trying to become someone else, but isn't that natural? She then asks, but what is the name of your company? What about tattoos? Why do you know so much about their culture when you've never lived among them? He asks, why is that being said here now? She continued, you always call yourself lowly, but I don't think that's because you want to. I don't even think it's because you don't like it. I think this is for you too. He replied, no, I'm not interested in those guys. I don't think so. Violet raised her voice like Winter. When Violet, who had never been one to make loud noises or be rude, shouted, not only Winter but also the employees around her stopped their actions. Violet continued, glaring at Winter. I'm going. I think of the miners of Caliban as you, when you were 5 and I think of you as when you were 12. He shouts, what kind of bullshit is that? There is no need to understand. Because we don't always understand each other anyway. Violet finished speaking and tried to get back into the carriage. Then Winter grabbed her arm again with strength. What does it mean? She asks. It would have been nice if I had been by your side. The moment I thought that. If that had been the case, there are moments where you wonder if you wouldn't be so scared now. As soon as Winter's hand lost strength, Violet got into the carriage and left. Winter looked at the departing carriage for a moment and grumbled. He spoke, What are you saying about a topic that wasn't even born when I was 5 years old? Then he patted his ear with his finger. At the words of his stubborn wife, he heard that damn bell again for the first time in a while.